All right, I have 7 p.m. Time to call this meeting to order. Happy New Year's, everyone. Councilmember Burton, if you would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ellen. Heather, I will hand it over to you for roll call.
Cheney.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Hogan.
Here.
Burton.
Here.
Anderson.
Present.
Carter.
Here.
And Roberts is excused.
Thank you, Heather. We will now open it up for public comments. So if you'd like to, please state your name and address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes. If you want to raise your hand on the app or *9 on the phone. And Heather, I will hand it over to you to see if there was anyone that has their hands up or any emailed comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, we have Rick Marshall.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Hey, Rick.
Great. Happy New Year. I just wanted to thank the council and staff for their years of effort to help make Camas really more walkable and accessible. Neither my sister nor my mom are able to drive, and being able to walk parts of Camas is really important to our family. Being able to go for daily walks and to be honest, sometimes multiple daily walks has been a real lifesaver for many of us during the past year of COVID. Yesterday, the weather was surprisingly good, and it was wonderful to see so many residents out enjoying our trails and sidewalks. My wife and I made it downtown, and we were really encouraged to see the new wayfinding signage along 1st and 2nd Avenues. Thank you for that addition. Some quick thoughts on protecting and improving walkability in Camas. If there's anything we can do to nudge property owners to keep sidewalks and right-of-ways clear, possibly consider joining the 20s Plenty campaign to lower auto speeds and increase pedestrian safety. You know, we want to welcome autos in Camas, but they have to be well behaved. Look for easy connections to existing trails or sidewalk networks. And consider road diets for Northwest 6th Avenue on the west end of town and Northeast 3rd Avenue on the east. I think both roadways could be reduced to 1 lane in each direction, opening up our opportunities for bike lanes, left turn lanes, parking, and much improved safety. And finally, make walkability a key design principle for any new development, especially downtown and near downtown. I'm thinking of the lab property in particular. Whether we like it or not, it's likely to develop sooner rather than later, and that's going to be a key connection. So once again, just thanks again for making Camas a wonderful place to live. We really look forward to Camas becoming truly a world-class walking community. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick.
I see no other hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor. However, we did have some emailed public comments in today. First, from Kathy Strabel, received at 2:47 p.m. Public comment for meeting January 4th, 2021. Second, from Douglas Strabel, received today at 4:01 p.m. Subject is public comments follow-up, Northwest Lake Road and Northwest Sierra Street traffic signal. And from Rick Marshall at 6:19 p.m. Thanks for creating a walkable community. And that's it.
Thank you, Heather. We have one staff presentation. Dennis Ryan, our operations supervisor, is going to be touching on or explaining the City of Vancouver job order contract interlocal agreement. So Dennis, I'm going to hand it over to you if you have found your new spot. And I don't know if he's still on mute, Heather, if you're muted.
I just asked him to unmute.
Good evening, the Mayor, council members. I apologize for my technical difficulty tonight.
No problem.
Before you tonight are two draft interlocal agreements with the City of Vancouver. It is for job order contracting. It's a piggyback interlocal agreement. Job order contracting, just briefly, it's a delivery method that allows many projects to be completed through a single competitive contract. This will give the city faster project starts, resource availability. No job is too small for these type of projects. We get pre-established unit prices for labor, for materials, volume discounts. Many times these job order contracts are for large dollar amounts when they bid them. I believe this one is for $5 million total. So there's the volume discount to be considered. Vancouver is the lead agency. As I mentioned, it's a $5 million contract. The city had previously looked at exploring job order contracting, but the dollar threshold over the life of the contract was too much for a smaller agency. We do have many upcoming projects that this would benefit, including the Rose property remodel, Ledbetter home, and Lacamas Lodge. There's in the budget some painting. So that's briefly what job order contracting is. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Dennis? I'm not seeing any. Oh, Don, I think I see you there.
I do have a number of questions, but I'd like to read a comment before I read my questions. I want to preface my comments and questions by saying that during my career and entire time on City Council, I have consistently strived to support in ways to minimize operational costs for citizens. I remain firm to that commitment, but in this case, I feel it appropriate to inquire about some equity concerns regarding this proposal, particularly considering our city's economic viability and recognition of our local businesses, and in this case, construction contractors and subcontractors. I'm sure we all know of many of them that do work in the city. I also acknowledge that oftentimes our local contractors are outbid during the competitive process by folks outside the jurisdiction. Before I begin with my list of questions related to the staff order, Dennis, you just mentioned that this is a more competitive contract, and it led me to wonder, how is this contract with Vancouver bid for the $5 million contracts? It'd be important for me to know the process that engage to know how it will benefit us as city co-signers.
So definitely happy to bring back more information and copies of the contract for your perusal. As far as competitive, they solicit this advertisement locally, similar to Camas's processes. There is some companies that have local ties. Some of the things we faced, in the past year, the library service desk project, getting folks to bid these projects or show up for the bid solicitations has been troublesome. That's where that no job is too small. The cost savings really is the volume amount of the work and the expertise that they have. When we can basically buy in bulk, we have the opportunity to bring the prices down in the unit costs.
Okay, thank you for that reply. I'm looking forward to seeing the process they used. What I'd like to do is just read my question under each section of the equity considerations. You can make notes, and I don't need an answer tonight, but I'm curious and I want to express what caught my attention in the context of local equity. Under the first section where it goes, what is the data and what does the city data tell us? Are there any city sales tax or other potential revenues lost by signing this contract with the two vendors authorized under the Vancouver contract? If you have an answer, fine. If not, I think I can, or I don't know if the others can, but I can wait for an answer on that before we approve.
I would have to explore the source for materials, so I will look into that as well.
Next comment under equity considerations: how have communities I assume that means our communities, been engaged? Are there opportunities to expand engagement? And my comment to that is, have the Camas based contractors been made aware of this agreement and the proposal before us tonight? And if not, I would appreciate knowing that there has been some outreach to our local contractors that might qualify to do some of these jobs. Has there been any outreach with local contractors?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Next comment, who will benefit from or be burdened by this agenda? And again, I'm going back, are there Camas-based contractors that would suffer the burden of loss? If not, it afford an opportunity to at least bid on Camas construction projects awarded under these ILAs. I see it's noted in both ILAs in Chapter 10 of each of the ILAs, the right to contract, which gives Camas the right not to use this contract, but to subject our project for bids. And I appreciate that. It kind of covers these concerns that I'm addressing. But to avoid creating an equity disadvantage for Camas economic sustainability and business development, help us understand, when would the city typically use these contractors as opposed to going out to bid? Once again, you can bring that back at the next meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, briefly, I can just talk. So the interest of the job order contracting is that it is primarily facility approach that we're looking for. And more often than not, we are having to solicit folks outside the city just because the interest isn't always there. So that's understandable, and I'll look into for some further details.
Okay, thank you. In the next section, it says we'll save on pricing because of receiving competitive pricing, materials, and labor. And just a question in the context of saving on labor, doesn't Washington State require all contracts to pay prevailing wage on all public contract projects?
That's correct.
Okay, I guess that's more of a comment than a question. I wanted to make sure. The next one having to do with the differential impact on underserved populations, people with disabilities and or communities of color. So my comment is, or question is, maybe impacts on current and future businesses, opportunities for equity-based owned companies, i.e. gender, race, and so forth. A concern, and I've maybe covered in another comment down below here is, well, let me say the next comment then. With regard to potential economic development recruitment impact, might frequent dependence on 2 Vancouver contracts create an impedance or disincentive for new startup or companies to either start up or relocating to Camas? Again, I'm not trying to suggest that these are substantial things singularly for us to give concern, but number one, I wanted to speak out on behalf of the local businesses. I think it's important that they're aware of what we're doing. Maybe there are other mechanisms that we can use to inspire better bidding or more bidding. How does this support a comprehensive plan, goal, policy, or other adopted resolution? It just occurs to me that this might apply. What impact, if any, would adoption of this concept apply to Camas Resolution 16-009, authorizing expenditures of less than $50,000 without specific council approval? And once again, Dennis, I'm not sure you'd know to answer that, but I just wanted to bring all of those comments or questions before council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
We'll follow up with those answers as well.
Actually, Mayor, it might help if I jump in as well, maybe add a little additional context. And Dennis talked about it a little bit, which was the intent for the use of these contracts. Really, at this point, as we look at the facilities-oriented contracts, and especially as we look at Ledbetter and Rose property, and we think about the types of projects that we're taking on there, it's the type of work that would, if you individualized each piece of work, we would potentially be having multiple contracts in each facility, and the ability to find contractors and the process and the time that it takes to do that are all things where we looked at job order contracting, and it's a way to essentially have a prime contractor, and then they go out and they find the individual subs to complete each one of the tasks that we find with each facility. And the other thing that helps with job order contracting is we have a contractor on hand, on board, that we can rely on their expertise, and we can go out to those facilities. We can look at them with the expert on hand and then figure out what's truly needed. And then they go back, they put the quotes together, and then staff is able to review and determine, if that's the best way to move forward. So these job order contracts are not meant to supplant any of the other public bidding processes that we would use on any project, first of all, but also it would not replace, kind of more of our traditional capital improvement projects. If you think about our road projects, our water projects, sewer, any of those types of projects, that's for the city more of a traditional bidding process. It's invites any and all contractors to apply and to provide bids for the city to review. So this is job order contracting, I think for us is really a very specific scope of work that where we, like I said, we really, I think would benefit from having a contractor on board with the expertise to look at those types of things. And it's not necessarily something that we know of, and we will certainly look into it and bring back additional information. But, how many local contractors, if you will, in the Camas area would be able to do this type of thing and actually, qualify under job order contracting. So there's a number of factors that go into this, but certainly efficiency, time, and cost, all do come into play as we look at this from a city perspective.
Thank you, Steve. I agree with that. And what caught my attention was the specificity of those two projects that were mentioned in the staff report, but yet it talks about other projects, and I just felt it worthy of commenting and asking about our local contractors. Thank you.
Steve Hogan.
Okay. I also want to see the contract, which that's the contract with, who is it? Whoever, Halverson or something like that. Whoever the contract is with that Vancouver has, I'd like to be able to read that contract before voting on it. The attachment that it refers to, it does not have the contract attached to that letter A. So I also would like to know more about the $50,000 limit and whether that's going to come back. Okay, the other things that that I have are, let's see here. Now, if we go into this contract, theoretically or actually, we have an ability to get both speed and low cost on these contracts. But if we're not rushed to do a project, are we going to see an effort made to get competitive bids so we can verify that the taxpayers are paying the lowest amount for the job? In other words, if we really don't have to, can we work with whoever Vancouver has a contract with and also put it out for bid? Because in item 10 says that we have the ability to do that. And it would be good for the citizens to know that we just didn't lay it out to one contractor and didn't see the competitive costs. So that's a question to be answered. I don't know if anybody wants to answer that now or just do it for later. No questions? Oh, no answer. Okay. And then the sales tax. So this is Vancouver's contract with an outfit, but we're in an interlocal agreement. So if we give these construction contracts within the city limits of Camas, I want to be assured that we're going to get the sales tax. that they're going to be marching to our tune like we've done with the other major construction jobs. And they have, when they buy items that are going to go into these projects, they have to put Camas as the destination of where this job is so that we collect sales tax. I'm looking at, I don't see Dennis, but I can see Steve and his head's nodding. So I'm thinking that's a yes.
Yes, and I think what I'm hearing definitely is we'll bring this back to the next workshop, I think with more detailed information on the job order contracting and try and address all of these questions. But, you know, in general, the contracting process still runs through the city. So the payments, the sales tax, you know, everything along those lines is still run through the city. Vancouver essentially, Vancouver is coming into play just from a piggybacking standpoint, if you will. The state allows us to essentially use, you know, contracts with other agencies as long as we have the interlocals in place. And so that mechanism is really where Vancouver's coming into play. And it does give us, you know, the ability to use their contracts with these two contractors. But once they're under the Camas umbrella, then it's pretty much a City of Camas project at that point.
Okay. I think that's it for right now, Mayor. Thanks, Steve. And Dennis.
Thank you, Steve. Greg, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, one and all, for your questions and answers. Too many to name at the moment. One question I'd like to put out there for the next presentation information is to roll up the advantages and disadvantages of the small works rosters organizations that go through the work to get on the roster, trying to understand where they would feel like they've been partnered or they may have been dispartnered or unpartnered through us signing this contractual relationship. The small works rosters are not always local companies, but they are usually smaller organizations that are looking for that smaller ticket, no bid, but they still need to quote work. So if you could roll that into the presentation in the future as well, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Any other questions or comments in regards to this agreement? All right, we will follow back up with more next time. That moves us to the consent agenda. What would council like to do for the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
And I believe that's a second right there. So it has been moved by Hogan and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Non-agenda items. Jamal, do you have anything for us today?
Nothing this evening, Mayor. Just want to say Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you and Happy New Year to you as well. Council member Shannon Roberts is not here today. Councilmember Smith.
Happy New Year, everyone. Nothing to report yet. I have RTC tomorrow as well as court meeting on Wednesday. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Melissa, and Happy New Year as well. Councilmember Burton.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Councilmember Cheney.
I have a couple of comments tonight. First off, as my peers will acknowledge, we've received probably close to a half a dozen comments about citizens' issues concerning fireworks on New Year's Eve. Maybe not quite a half a dozen, but close. And I would like to request that maybe we hear a combined report, either see one in writing or hear from the fire and police departments on issues or incidents occurring that might give rise to us incorporating that into the conversation that we anticipate we will have sometime next year, I guess. As I recall, we had consensus view that we should try to do a survey. So I suspect we'll have is that a fair assumption, Jamal or Barry, that we'll deal with this.
That's how I
at some
remember it,
point.
Don. Yes, that we discussed doing a survey and kind of getting a better understanding. So I guess, and just so I understand it as well, just more specifics on any incidents or issues that we had. We'll bubble that up, or maybe we can put that in the FYI that we send out, so that you can have just an assessment from both the fire chief and the police chief.
Thank you. I trust you both have seen those comments from citizens. Some are pretty frustrated, so not sure how to respond to them without knowing the scope and scale of the activity that night. So thank you. There was an email that came to us before the meeting tonight from Mr. Strable, asking about us not responding to certain inquiries that are made during council meetings. And it seems to me earlier on during COVID, we had a process by which we answered citizens' questions. And now I think that's fallen by the wayside. I'm not sure that I'm inclined to respond to every inquiry because I don't know what others are saying or what the administration is responding. So whether we deal with it in the planning discussion or sometime, I think I would like to encourage that we have conversation about how we as an organization respond to citizen questions and inquiries in a formal way. If they take the time to formalize a request, I think we should respond in kind in some fashion. I'm just not sure that it's prudent to 7 of us to answer 7 different perspectives that we hold. That doesn't mean we need to conspire, but so I just think we need to have some dialogue about how to do that. It's always been a challenge ever since I've been on council, but I know folks are frustrated by the lack of reply. So I'd like to acknowledge that and try to seek some solution for it.
Sounds good. Thank you, Don.
And my final question is, I'm excited about our new hires. I understand they're coming on board fairly soon. My question is, do they have employment contracts? And number 1, and number 2, before there's a reply, do those contracts exceed any accommodations established in the non-represented handbook? And if so, I'd like to know.
I'll hand it over to Jamal or Jennifer.
First question, yes, they have contracts. Second question is no, it doesn't exceed anything outside the handbook.
Okay, so to clarify, then there are no separation settlements or moving expenses included, because that's not in the non-rep handbook.
Jennifer, could you respond to that?
Yeah, we can, those are public, so I can get copies of those. No, they both do have relocation expenses, which has not been uncommon for department heads that have come from out of state. So those both do have that. They do not have, I think you asked about, what was the other?
Severance and moving.
No, just moving. Expenses.
Okay. You know, I don't want to be a stickler on this, but if it's a contract, number 1, and number 2, it's not something authorized previously by this council, which encumbers future council and city obligations. I believe it's an issue that needs to be approved by council. I would yield to a legal opinion on that, but I think we've got one once before, and that's what I understood that to be. So sorry about raising the issue. I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence here.
And
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Councilmember Carter.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. The one thing I want to bring up to council and hear from each other is the opportunity to write a letter to Governor Inslee in regards to, we're on a pause for another week. This week, he is releasing more information to us about opening up. And I would like us to write a letter to encourage and agree with any opening standards, at least getting back to phase 2. We have restaurants that are, some have closed, some are on the brink of it. And the longer we are restricted to outdoor dining and takeout only are causing great hardships to the point where those owners are considering breaking the law. So I think as a council, we should encourage Governor Inslee to open up, even if it's back to phase 2, with all the safety protocols in place, the restrictions. But I would like us to step forward and support our local business owners, especially our restaurant owners, our movie theater owner. If they're kept closed for much longer, we won't have them around. And so I'm proposing that to my fellow councilors and the mayor, and would love to hear what your thoughts are.
I'll open it up now at this point if anyone wants to jump in or thoughts either way. I think we can certainly try, or Don?
I just wanted to chime in and agree, total agreement with her suggestion.
So I guess next steps maybe is we could, Jamal, maybe we could put together some ideas and then see if we can, come to some sort of agreement as far as what that would look like, and then get something together.
Can I clarify that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say Jamal, and she was asking the council, so we would give our answers to Jamal, and he would collect them and then send it out to all of us. And
well, I mean,
yeah, that's kind of, instead of having quorums and open public meeting type of issues. That's what you're suggesting?
I may or may not. I don't know. This is where I look to Sean and even Jamal as well, as far as sending one message when we all have different ideas, and it can be challenging. I guess Jamal and Sean, I guess, are kind of, what's the best way to kind of get on the same page with something like this?
If majority of council, there's majority consent to send a letter to Governor Inslee, council members could individually send information to me, and staff, we can work together to draft a letter, and we can send it out to council for approval of the letter.
So if council wants to start that, to send it to Jamal, and then we can kind of work from there.
So Bonnie, I would, under that format, I would do that. I would send my suggestions to Jamal. He totals everybody's suggestions up, and then we see it. And then I guess at that time, we would either put our name on it as council members or not, or suggest things get removed, that type of a thing, I guess.
Well, I mean, again, I think from a timing standpoint, waiting 2 weeks next council meeting to bring it forward, it's not going to have the same effect as
yeah,
timing wise. So we'll try and figure it out, Bonnie, and we'll see what we can pull together.
Great. I greatly appreciate it, and I know our business owners would appreciate it. That's all I have.
Very challenging time for those businesses right now, for sure. Thank you, Bonnie. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy 2021 to everybody. I think we all kicked 2020 and it's behind on its way out the door. And hopefully it doesn't come back. I have a CTRAN board meeting next Tuesday. If there's any questions or concerns you're hearing from the constituency, please let me know prior to the meeting and I'll make sure to convey. Secondly, asking Mayor and Jamal, when will we see the draft list of topics for the session on the 15th for review prior to them being finalized? Is my pending question. I don't need an answer tonight unless there is one available.
Is there one available, Jamal?
Yeah, the final list will be going out to council tomorrow for the 15th.
Meaning your use of the word final and my use of the word draft is slightly different. So clarifying.
Yeah, so we only received feedback from 2 council members, and other feedback received. We added the items that were policy maker related versus administrative, and added those to the agenda, and prepared a final agenda today to send out tomorrow.
Thank you for the clarification.
Is that it, Greg? Sorry. Thank you. Councilmember Hogan.
Happy New Year, and welcome for Brian and Trang. Good to have you on board and look forward to meeting you. I don't have any meetings immediately coming up, unless there's one for the CREDC, but they haven't sent me the schedule yet. Question about the Lacamas Lake Ad Hoc Committee. Like to know when we're going to finalize the members of that so we can get that moving.
Friday is when I have scheduled with Jamal. I'll reach out then as well as we go through that process. But this Friday is when I have it on my schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. The only thing that I had was, other than, again, wishing everyone a happy new year. I'm happy to see, as Greg pointed out, the 2020 to be gone. We have the city action days coming up and the registration is now open. It's going to be online this year. I got to do it last year as well, but this is an opportunity for us to push some of those city legislation priorities. So if you're interested in signing up, if you want to just reach out to Jamal, he can help facilitate it. The date is February 10th and 11th. And again, it's going to be all online. So I think it's just a unique opportunity. And I think there's a lot of strength. The more of us there pushing for something, it's just a stronger message. And that is it for my updates. Next, we move on to the meeting items. We have the public hearing for draft rezone agreement modification. Robert Mall, our planning manager, could you please walk us through this one?
You bet. First off, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm going to share my screen here, show you a pretty little map. So back in September of 2020, I presented to council in detail the proposed modification to the rezone agreement. What had happened is back in April of 2010, the city council entered into a concomitant rezone agreement with the owners of the properties that are contained within the original document. I've highlighted what's applicable for tonight. Just immediately south of the red area, you'll see the storage facility. That was also part of the agreement, but is not subject to this particular update. But in the underlying zoning designation is LIBP. And when the city entered into the rezone agreement with the applicant, it actually brought in a table of restricted uses from the light industrial or LI district that would prevail. Once the applicant made application for the storage facility back in 2018, there was some interpretation from both staff and the applicant side with what limited use table was listed in that agreement. We were able to successfully navigate through that, and they got their permits and approvals and built the facility that you see in the photograph today. But for clarity's sake, they suggested incorporating the entire use table as it's currently adopted in the Camas Municipal Code to provide clarity and certainty as to what allowed uses to be permitted in that concomitant rezone area, with the exception of striking any further storage facility uses. What's highlighted in red there is about 47 acres. The applicant contends there's about 9 usable acres, kind of located behind the fire station that you see up off to the right-hand side there. So the idea was that this would provide some clarity so they could look at either doing some development themselves or solicit the property to other developers to market it and so forth. Nothing's really changed since we discussed this back in September. Staff does support this change and does recommend that council conduct a public hearing, take testimony, and render a decision. If you do choose to approve it, then direct the city attorney to return with an adoptive ordinance. And I do believe that the applicant's representative, Leanne Bremer, is also available for questions this evening. That is what I have for you right now. I'll stop share so we can get back to looking at everybody here. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I know that Leanne's also available, so I'll turn it over to you.
Questions or comments?
Robert, who owns the property north of that red line?
Oh, let me pull that back up. Same property owners. If you could see my hand, unfortunately, this picture doesn't show it super well.
Okay.
But these two parcels are under the same ownership. North of those two parcels is Wafer Tech.
Oh, okay.
But basically, these two on the north side, they're pretty wet, and they were not subject to the original concomitant agreement.
Okay. And did you say, I missed it, did you say we were going to have a public hearing on this?
That's tonight.
Tonight. Okay. Okay, good. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Steve. Don, I see your hands.
Just to help my weak memory here, Robert, if you'd remind me why we in the schedule it includes storage, right? But we're excluding that for this request. Can you help me remember why that's happening? Why it's being excluded?
Well, that if council would recall, it was back in, I want to say 2018 and 19 that we staff was directed to modify the municipal code to only allow storage facilities in the heavy industrial district. Given that there were a couple that were going up on some lands that were intended for, in theory and hope, that higher wage jobs type of activities, because the money's put into 38th Avenue and Freeburg Strunk was considerable on behalf of the city, and that's where the two storage facilities ended up going. So,
okay, thank you. Robert, that's totally adequate, and it refreshes my memory, and I think I probably supported that. I just wanted to remember for sure. Thank you.
yes.
All right, with no other questions, I think we can open it up for the public hearing. So if anyone would like to please to give some public testimony, please raise your hand or *9 on the phone, and I'll hand it back to you, Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the current time, I do not see any hands raised.
All right. Well, at this time, then we will close the public hearing. And further discussion or motions from the council?
There we go. Have a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve the rezone agreement modification and to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance for the council's consideration.
Second.
It has been moved by Burton and seconded to approve the rezone agreement modification and to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance for council's consideration. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Jamal, I'll hand it over to you for the City of Camas proclamation of civil emergency COVID-19.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, before you this evening is the proclamation of civil emergency. This item has been requested to be on each council agenda moving forward for reaffirmation. There have been no changes to the proclamation or supplemental since the last council meeting. This item is open for council discussion and any motions.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing to consider, and I would make an ask prior to the next meeting where this would appear before us, is review our adopted budget document that was processed in late 2020, because the budget is built around much of the stuff that I have in my reading is in the amendment. And I'm wondering if the amendment needs to go forward and just go away and be allowed within the adopted budget document as the guidelines. I'd love to hear the answer on that at the next meeting prior to that review. I have no objection with it staying as is now, but I'd like kind of a fresh pair of eyes as we got through the budget and then adopted it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions or motions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the mayor's proclamation of civil emergency dated March 18, 2020, the supplement dated April 15, 2020, and the amendment dated June 15, 2020 be reaffirmed.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved by Porter and seconded that the mayor's proclamation of civil emergency dated March 18, 2020, the supplement dated April 15, 2020, and the amendment dated June 16, 2020 be reaffirmed. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. And we're back now to public comments. So Heather, I'll hand it over to you. If you'd like to make a public comment, please state your name and address for the record. You have up to 3 minutes. And Heather, if you could also let us know if there's any email public comments as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just checked the email box and I see no new emailed public comments. And at this time, I see no hands raised.
Thank you, Heather. And with that, then I will call an end to this meeting. Thank you very much and welcome to 2021.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.